a silent burden. Maya had married David 10 years ago in a wedding that felt like a dream come true. They were deeply in love, and their future seemed bright. But as the years passed, the joy of their love began to fade under the weight of unspoken expectations. From the first year of their marriage, Maya faced questions from her mother-in-law, Mrs. Turner, about when they would have children. At first, the questions were innocent, wrapped in excitement about becoming a grandmother. But as time wore on, the questions turned to accusations and bitterness. Mrs. Turner became convinced that Maya was the reason there were no grandchildren. "Why can't you give my son a child?" she would say, her sharp tone laced with disappointment. Maya endured these remarks silently, believing it was her fault. After countless tests and visits to specialists, nothing seemed wrong with her. Every visit left her confused, with no answers to give David or his mother. Meanwhile, the pressure from Mrs. Turner continued, eroding Maya's confidence. Her husband, David, remained mostly silent, offering little comfort as his mother's sharp words pierced deeper each year. As Maya silently bore the blame, her relationship with David began to crack. He became distant, burying himself in work, avoiding discussions about children. Maya, feeling more alone than ever, spent sleepless nights wondering what had gone wrong. The love they had once shared felt like a distant memory, overshadowed by their unfulfilled dreams of a family. One evening, after yet another confrontation with Mrs. Turner, Maya finally broke. Her tears wouldn't stop as she confronted David. "Why do you let her treat me like this?" she cried, her voice shaking with years of pent-up pain. "I've been blamed for something I don't even understand." David sat in silence, his head hung low, as if the weight of a decade of secrets was crushing him. After a long pause, he finally spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. "It's not your fault, Maya." "What do you mean?" Maya's voice softened, confusion mixing with her pain. David looked up at her, his eyes full of shame. "It's me. I can't father a child." Maya stood frozen, her heart pounding. Her mind raced, trying to process his words. "What are you saying?" "I found out 5 years ago. I didn't want to tell you. I didn't want to admit it to myself," he confessed, tears welling up in his eyes. "I thought maybe, somehow, it could change, or we could just keep trying. But it never did." Maya's world shattered in that moment. The years of guilt, the accusations from Mrs. Turner, the blame she carried, all of it was unnecessary. Her anger surged, not just at David for keeping this from her, but also at the years they had lost to silence. She had been tortured, humiliated, and blamed, while the truth had been hidden from her. "Why didn't you tell me?" Maya's voice trembled, the weight of the revelation too much to bear. "We could have faced this together." "I was ashamed," David admitted, tears now streaming down his face. "I didn't want to be less of a man in your eyes. I thought maybe it would be easier if we didn't talk about it, if you never knew." Maya sank into a chair, her heart heavy with both relief and sorrow. She felt the weight of 10 years lift, but at the same time she realized the depth of the betrayal. The love they once had now seemed so far away, buried beneath years of secrets and lies. She had fought so hard to keep their marriage intact, believing she was the problem, when all along David had let her carry that burden alone. "I can't do this anymore," she whispered, her voice barely audible. David's face fell. "Maya, please, don't leave. I didn't mean for it to be like this." "I've been fighting for us for so long," Maya said, her voice cracking, "but I can't fight this alone anymore." David knelt beside her, tears of regret in his eyes. "I love you, Maya. I'm so sorry. I should have told you. I should have stood by you. But I was scared. Please don't leave me." Maya looked into his eyes, seeing the man she once loved so deeply, but the years of pain had taken their toll, and she wasn't sure if she could find her way back to him. "I need time, David," she said softly, standing up and grabbing her coat. "I need time to heal, time to think." As she walked toward the door, David called after her, his voice desperate. "Maya, please." But she didn't turn back. She stepped out into the night, the cool air hitting her face as tears streamed down her cheeks. For the first time in a decade, Maya felt free from the weight of guilt she had carried. She didn't know what the future held, but she knew she couldn't stay in the darkness any longer. As she walked away from their home, Maya whispered to herself, "I deserve better." The night was quiet, and though her heart was heavy, Maya felt a sense of peace. She knew healing would take time, but for the first time in years, she was no longer carrying the burden of a lie.